Detective Michael Ross stood in the doorway of apartment 403, staring at the unusual crime scene before him. Nothing was broken, nothing stolen, yet a man lay dead on his leather armchair. The victim, James Wilson, sat perfectly still, as if he had simply fallen asleep while reading the newspaper that now lay scattered at his feet. "What do we have?" Ross asked his partner, Detective Lisa Martinez, who was already examining the scene. James Wilson, 45, financial advisor. The building security found him this morning when his office reported he hadn't shown up for work, Martinez replied, pointing to the coffee cup on the side table. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. Ross walked around the apartment, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. The apartment was neat and organized, almost too perfect. Everything had its placebooks arranged by size on the shelves, dishes stacked precisely in the kitchen cabinets, shoes lined up perfectly by the door. Something caught his eye. In the corner of the living room stood an old grandfather clock, its pendulum swinging steadily back and forth. But the time it showed was wrong, 3:15, while it was currently 9:30 in the morning. "Martinez, when did the security guard last see Wilson alive?" "Yesterday evening, around 6 p.m. Said Wilson came home from work as usual, carrying his briefcase and today's newspaper. Ross frowned. "Today's newspaper? The one on the floor?" Martinez nodded. "Yes, that's strange, isn't it? How did he have tomorrow's paper yesterday?" Ross walked over to the scattered newspaper pages. The date confirmed their suspicion. It was indeed today's paper. He carefully lifted the pages, examining them one by one. "Coffee cup," Ross suddenly said. "It's still warm." Martinez pulled on her gloves and picked up the cup. "You're right. And look, there's lipstick on the rim. Wilson lived alone, didn't he?" Ross nodded, his mind already connecting the dots. He walked to the kitchen and opened the trash can. Empty coffee grounds, but no coffee pod or filter. In fact, the trash was completely empty except for those grounds. "Someone cleaned up," he muttered. "They were thorough, but they missed the grounds." The detective returned to the grandfather clock, studying it more closely. Behind it, partially hidden, was a small security camera. Ross smiled, their silent witness. Back at the station, Ross and Martinez reviewed the security footage. At 3:15 a.m., a figure entered Wilson's apartment using a key. The person moved with familiarity through the dark space, straight to the kitchen. Minutes later, they served 2 cups of coffee. "Stop the video," Ross commanded. "Look at how they're moving. They know exactly where everything is. This isn't a stranger." They watched as Wilson and his visitor sat talking. Wilson took a sip of his coffee and within minutes slumped in his chair. The visitor calmly waited, checked his pulse, and then methodically began cleaning the apartment. "They knew about the camera," Martinez observed. "Never looked directly at it, kept their face hidden." Ross rewound the footage, watching it again. Something about the visitor's movements seemed familiar. He'd seen that walk before, that way of organizing things. "The real estate agent," he said suddenly. "Remember how the apartment was staged when we first arrived? Too perfect, everything in its place." Martinez's eyes widened. Monica Turner, Wilson's real estate agent from 6 months ago when he bought the place. She would have had a spare key and access to his financial records during the purchase, Ross added. "Let's pay Miss Turner a visit." At Monica Turner's office, they found more than they expected. Hidden in her desk was a stack of documents showing Wilson had discovered she was running a mortgage fraud scheme. He had planned to report her to the authorities. "The newspaper was her mistake," Ross explained later, as they led Turner away in handcuffs. She brought it with her to make it look like Wilson had been reading it before he died. But she grabbed today's paper from her own doorstep before coming to kill him. "And the clock?" Martinez asked. "Another mistake. She bumped into it while cleaning, changed the time. Our silent witness caught it all, the clock, the coffee, her familiar movements through his apartment. The camera she thought was hidden enough to miss caught every detail. Turner had been thorough in cleaning the apartment, but she couldn't erase every trace. The silent witness, the grandfather clock's camera, had seen it all, proving once again that in the world of crime, every detail matters, and sometimes the most important witnesses are the ones that don't speak at all. As Ross finished filing his report that evening, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. Turner had staged homes for a living, making them perfect for potential buyers. In the end, it was that same perfectionism that had given her away. Crime scene had been too perfect, too staged, just like all her open houses. The silent witness had spoken volumes, and justice had been served.